The strange thing about Jennifer Aniston is that her career never really collapsed in the way Hollywood careers usually do. There was no public breakdown, no addiction scandal, no explosive cancellation, no dramatic disappearance from the spotlight. In fact, 4 years, she remained one of the most loved women in America. Magazine covers adored her. Talk shows protected her. Audiences rooted for her. Even people who never watched her films somehow felt emotionally connected to her. And yet, somewhere beneath all that affection, something quietly started dying. Not her fame. Something worse. Her artistic identity. Because over time, Jennifer Aniston stopped becoming a person in Hollywood. She became a brand. And the terrifying part is, almost nobody noticed when it happened. For decades, the public saw her as the woman who survived heartbreak with grace. The relatable beauty. The funny one. The safe celebrity. The eternal girl next door, who somehow stayed frozen in time while Hollywood destroyed everyone else around her. But behind that carefully protected image was a much more uncomfortable story. A story about fear. Fear of aging. Fear of irrelevance. Fear of becoming unlikable. Fear of taking risks. And eventually, fear of becoming invisible. Because what destroyed Jennifer Aniston's career was not one scandal. It was something far more tragic. She slowly disappeared inside the version of herself the world loved most. And by the time Hollywood changed, Jennifer Aniston didn't know how to change with it. Long before the headlines, before the tabloid obsession, before the endless "poor Jennifer" narrative that followed her for almost 20 years, she was just another struggling actress trying desperately not to fail in a city designed to humiliate failure publicly. People forget how unstable her early career actually was. Today, Jennifer Aniston feels inevitable. Like she was always destined for superstardom. But in the late 1980s and early 1990s, nothing about her career looked special. She came from a Hollywood family. Her father, John Aniston, had success in television. Her mother, Nancy Dow, understood the entertainment world too. But growing up around Hollywood didn't make Jennifer powerful. If anything, it made her deeply insecure. She grew up constantly comparing herself to impossible standards. Beauty mattered. Thinness mattered. Charm mattered. And Jennifer later admitted she never fully felt good enough. Even as a child, she struggled with self-image issues. Her relationship with her mother reportedly became emotionally painful partly because of criticism surrounding appearance and beauty. Years later, Jennifer would openly discuss how deeply those comments affected her self-esteem. And maybe that was the beginning of the entire tragedy. Because Jennifer Aniston spent most of her life trying to become someone audiences would never reject. In Hollywood, that instinct can make you famous, but it can also slowly erase you. Before Friends, her career was shaky and forgettable. She appeared in failed television shows, tiny roles, projects nobody remembers now. She was close to disappearing before she ever became famous. There was even a moment where she seriously questioned whether acting would work out at all. Then came 1994, and one audition changed everything. Friends wasn't just another sitcom. It became a cultural earthquake. And Jennifer Aniston wasn't originally positioned as its biggest star. At first, the attention inside the industry leaned toward other cast members. But then something unexpected happened. America became obsessed with Rachel Green. Not just the character, the fantasy of her. The haircut became a phenomenon. Fashion trends exploded. Her voice, expressions, romantic storylines, everything became culturally dominant almost overnight. Jennifer Aniston didn't simply become famous. She became comforting. That distinction would later become a prison. Because audiences didn't just like Rachel Green. They emotionally needed her. She represented a version of adulthood that felt attractive but safe. Vulnerable but polished. Funny but never threatening. Beautiful but relatable. And Jennifer played the role so naturally that eventually people stopped separating actress from character. That's when the trap began forming. During the peak of Friends, Jennifer Aniston became one of the most recognizable women on Earth. The money was enormous. The fame was unimaginable. Paparazzi followed her constantly. Tabloids turned her personal life into serialized entertainment. But professionally, something dangerous was happening behind the scenes. Hollywood had already decided who she was. And worse, Jennifer seemed to agree with them. While other actors aggressively chased transformation, darkness, reinvention, or artistic credibility, Jennifer leaned harder into familiarity. Romantic comedies, safe performances, warm charm, controlled vulnerability. Studios loved it because it sold tickets. Audiences loved it because it felt emotionally easy. But artistic evolution almost completely stopped. And at the time, nobody cared. Because Jennifer Aniston was still winning the popularity contest. In many ways, she became the last great tabloid-era female celebrity. Before social media fragmented fame forever. Before celebrity culture became chaotic and politically dangerous. Jennifer existed in a very specific era where magazines could build entire national narratives around a woman's love life. And no celebrity suffered from that machine more than she did. Then came Brad Pitt. At first, they looked untouchable. The marriage became Hollywood royalty almost instantly. Two impossibly attractive stars. Constant media fascination. Public obsession. Red carpets that felt engineered to trigger envy across the entire world. But underneath the fantasy was a pressure cooker. Because the media didn't just cover Jennifer Aniston anymore. They emotionally invested in her. That sounds flattering until you realize what it actually means. The public stopped allowing her to be human. Every pregnancy rumor became front-page news. Every appearance became body analysis. Every marriage story became public property. Jennifer later admitted there were years where the pregnancy speculation became genuinely painful. Magazine culture constantly framed her as incomplete without motherhood, as if her identity depended entirely on becoming a wife and mother. And the cruelty of it was subtle, not explosive, not openly hateful, just relentless. 1,000 tiny humiliations disguised as entertainment. Then in 2005, everything detonated. The divorce between Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt became one of the most commercially successful celebrity breakups in modern history. And that's important to understand. The breakup became content. A global emotional narrative. Especially once Angelina Jolie entered the story publicly. Suddenly, Jennifer Aniston wasn't just famous. She became symbolic. The abandoned wife. The heartbroken woman. The victim America wanted to protect. At first, the sympathy helped her. Public support exploded around her. People projected their own heartbreak onto Jennifer. Women especially connected emotionally with the humiliation narrative created by tabloids. But sympathy can become another kind of cage. Because once the public decides your identity emotionally, escaping it becomes nearly impossible. Jennifer Aniston stopped being viewed primarily as an actress. She became a cultural emotional support figure. The sad but resilient woman smiling through pain. And Hollywood noticed something crucial. That image was profitable. Very profitable. Suddenly, Jennifer's interviews became less about acting and more about survival. Her private life overshadowed her work completely. Studios marketed her warmth, likability, and emotional familiarity more aggressively than her talent. And Jennifer leaned into it because she almost had no choice. America wanted reassurance from her. Not transformation. Not unpredictability. Not danger. Just reassurance. So while actresses around her began chasing darker roles, prestige performances, reinventions, and riskier artistic identities, Jennifer Aniston became emotionally frozen in public consciousness. The safe woman. The wounded sweetheart. The comforting celebrity. And eventually, that image started damaging her career in ways people barely recognized at the time. Because Hollywood changes fast. Audience tastes evolve brutally. And by the late 2000s, romantic comedies, Jennifer's safest territory, were slowly beginning to collapse. The genre that once made stars was losing cultural power. Streaming hadn't fully arrived yet, but the movie industry was already changing underneath everyone's feet. Mid-budget adult films were becoming harder to sustain. Superhero franchises dominated attention. Comedy styles shifted. Female audiences wanted more complexity. Younger viewers gravitated toward messier, riskier personalities. Jennifer Aniston's image suddenly felt strangely stuck in another era. And the painful part was, she could feel it happening. You can see it in certain interviews from that period. The controlled laughter. the polished answers, the constant emphasis on being fine. There was always this sense that Jennifer Aniston was managing perception every second of her public existence. Never too emotional, never too angry, never too controversial, never too strange. But Hollywood rarely rewards emotional safety forever. Eventually it punishes predictability, and Jennifer's film career quietly started drifting into repetition. Movie after movie blurred together. The same emotional rhythms, the same romantic energy, the same carefully market-tested charm. Films performed decently enough to avoid disaster, but not powerfully enough to redefine her legacy. And critics increasingly noticed the pattern. There was a growing feeling that Jennifer Aniston had become too polished to surprise anyone anymore. Too controlled, too careful, too dependent on audiences already loving her before the movie even started. What made this especially tragic was that flashes of deeper talent occasionally appeared. In films like The Good Girl, critics saw something more vulnerable and emotionally raw beneath the familiar persona. Later performances in projects like Cake revealed an actress capable of darker emotional territory. But every time Jennifer moved toward reinvention, she seemed to retreat back toward safety, almost like she didn't trust audiences enough to fully change. Or maybe she didn't trust herself. And psychologically, that makes sense. Because Jennifer Aniston spent decades being rewarded for emotional familiarity. Hollywood told her repeatedly, "Stay lovable, stay beautiful, stay easy to consume." So she did, until the industry slowly stopped valuing exactly those things. And then there was aging, the one subject Hollywood fears more than failure, especially for women. Jennifer Aniston became trapped inside one of the cruelest expectations in entertainment history, remaining eternally desirable while never visibly struggling to maintain it. For years, magazines treated her appearance like a national obsession. Every wrinkle became discussion. Every hairstyle became analysis. Every bikini photograph became proof that she had still got it. Imagine living inside that kind of scrutiny for decades. The pressure wasn't simply about looking young. It was about preserving a fantasy people emotionally depended on. Rachel Green was never supposed to age. But Jennifer Aniston did. And Hollywood has always struggled to forgive women for reminding audiences that time exists. The irony is that Jennifer often appeared more emotionally mature and self-aware than the media narrative surrounding her. In interviews, she spoke thoughtfully about loneliness, relationships, therapy, and public pressure. But those moments rarely became the headline. Because the media machine preferred simpler narratives. Jennifer Aniston crying over men. Jennifer Aniston, finally happy. Jennifer Aniston, still searching for love. Her actual humanity became secondary to the character the public wanted her to perform endlessly. And eventually, something strange happened. People still loved Jennifer Aniston. But fewer people seemed excited by her work. That's a terrifying place for an actor to end up. Because fame and artistic relevance are not the same thing. One can survive long after the other quietly fades. And beneath the glamorous red carpets and billion-dollar celebrity branding, Jennifer Aniston may have started realizing a deeply uncomfortable truth. The world was emotionally attached to her image, more than her evolution. And once an actor becomes trapped inside nostalgia, escaping it becomes almost impossible. Especially when nostalgia is the only thing keeping Hollywood interested. By the early 2010s, Jennifer Aniston was still enormously famous. But fame can be misleading. Sometimes it hides decline better than failure does. Because failure is obvious. Slow irrelevance is quieter, more psychological, and far more difficult to admit, especially for someone whose entire career depended on being universally loved. Then came the moment that may have revealed the deepest contradiction of Jennifer Aniston's entire life. The public still saw her as one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. But Hollywood itself was beginning to move on. And Jennifer could feel it. By the time the 2010s fully arrived, something had fundamentally changed in Hollywood. The industry Jennifer Aniston conquered no longer existed. And maybe the cruelest part was that she seemed to understand that before most people did. For years, Jennifer had mastered a very specific kind of celebrity survival. She stayed likable, avoided public meltdowns, protected her image carefully, never became politically explosive, never turned chaotic. never became scandalous enough for America to truly hate her. In another era, that would have guaranteed permanent dominance. But modern fame was becoming something else entirely. Hollywood was no longer rewarding stability. It was rewarding disruption, transformation, vulnerability, danger, reinvention. And Jennifer Aniston, intentionally or not, had spent decades building the exact opposite kind of persona. She was controlled, predictable, safe. Even her interviews felt carefully temperature-checked. Every answer polished just enough to avoid backlash but emotional enough to maintain sympathy. And eventually audiences began sensing it. Not consciously at first, but culturally. The emotional spontaneity that once made her feel relatable slowly started making her feel manufactured. Meanwhile, a younger generation of actresses entered Hollywood willing to expose uglier parts of themselves publicly. They embraced awkwardness, instability, controversy, emotional transparency, political intensity, and artistic unpredictability. Jennifer belonged to an older celebrity system, one built around perfection management. And that system was quietly collapsing. But here's what makes Jennifer Aniston's story psychologically fascinating. She wasn't untalented. She wasn't incapable of depth. In fact, many directors and critics repeatedly hinted at something frustrating about her career. There always seemed to be a better actress trapped underneath the safer version she kept presenting. You see glimpses of it in certain performances where the mask cracks slightly. Moments where exhaustion appears. Bitterness. Loneliness. Resentment. Fear. But those moments never lasted long enough to fully redefine her career. Because Jennifer always seemed to retreat before complete transformation could happen. And the public helped reinforce that fear. Whenever she attempted darker or more emotionally uncomfortable material, audiences often seemed uncertain what to do with it. They didn't necessarily want Jennifer Aniston to challenge them psychologically. They wanted emotional familiarity, comfort, charm. The same warmth they associated with an older version of television itself. So Jennifer became stuck in one of Hollywood's most dangerous loops. The audience rewarded her for staying the same, while critics punished her for it. And over time, that contradiction slowly damaged her artistic credibility. One of the biggest examples came through the romantic comedy machine that had once protected her career. For a while, Jennifer Aniston practically became the queen of studio romantic comedies. Films like The Breakup, Marley and Me, Just Go With It, and We're the Millers made money because audiences already liked Jennifer before buying the ticket. That's an important distinction. People weren't always showing up for the films. They were showing up for her emotional familiarity. But that created another long-term problem. Very few of those films became artistically important. They succeeded commercially, then vanished culturally. And slowly, Jennifer Aniston developed a reputation that terrified serious actors. Dependable but shallow. Successful but unchallenging. Beloved but not respected enough. That difference matters enormously in Hollywood, especially as actors age. Because eventually, beauty fades as commercial currency. Romantic leads become harder to sustain. The industry starts asking a terrifying question. What else can you offer? And for Jennifer Aniston, that question became more dangerous every year. Partly because the Rachel Green effect never fully disappeared. Even decades after Friends ended, Jennifer remained emotionally fused with that character in public imagination. It became almost impossible for audiences to separate nostalgia from reality. And nostalgia is seductive. But creatively, it can suffocate an actor alive. The public didn't want Jennifer evolving into someone darker, stranger, older, or emotionally complicated. They wanted preservation. Hollywood often destroys women through impossible contradictions. Stay young forever, but mature gracefully. Stay relatable, but remain glamorous. Be vulnerable, but never messy. Jennifer Aniston spent years trying to satisfy all those demands simultaneously, and eventually it started showing. There was a visible exhaustion creeping into her public image by the mid-2010s. Not dramatic exhaustion. Not breakdown-level collapse. Something subtler. Emotional fatigue. The fatigue of someone who had spent decades performing emotional stability for public consumption. And maybe nowhere was that more obvious than in her relationship history. By then, Jennifer's love life had become one of the longest-running media narratives in modern celebrity culture. Every relationship became psychological analysis. Every breakup became public mourning. Every new man became another chapter in a storyline she no longer controlled. Even when she tried escaping it, the narrative followed her. Especially after her marriage to Justin Theroux. At first, the relationship looked like a reset. More private, more mature, less publicly performative than the Brad Pitt era. But even then, media coverage never stopped framing Jennifer through absence. Would this finally make her happy? Would she finally have children? Would this finally heal her? The public kept treating Jennifer Aniston like a woman permanently standing beside some invisible emotional void. And eventually, that narrative started affecting how people viewed her professionally too. She became emotionally over-associated with personal disappointment. Not because she publicly presented herself that way, but because the culture insisted on framing her that way. That distinction matters. Jennifer Aniston rarely publicly collapsed. The media collapsed her for entertainment, over and over again. And psychologically, living inside that kind of narrative for decades has consequences. Because eventually a person begins managing themselves through the eyes of strangers. Every appearance becomes maintenance. Every interview becomes correction. Every public statement becomes image preservation. And Jennifer became extraordinarily good at preservation. Too good. By this point in her career, almost nobody knew what Jennifer Aniston actually wanted artistically anymore. Did she still crave critical respect? Did she secretly resent being underestimated? Did she feel trapped by likability? Or had she simply accepted that Hollywood valued her more as a symbol than as an evolving actress? The tragedy is that glimpses of frustration occasionally escaped, particularly when discussions about aging surfaced. Jennifer repeatedly pushed back against Hollywood's obsession with female youth, but the industry surrounding her continued reducing her value to appearance anyway. Headlines constantly treated her body like public property. Even compliments sounded sinister. Jennifer Aniston still looks amazing at her age. At her age, Hollywood always hides cruelty inside praise, especially toward women over 40. And Jennifer's image became inseparable from anti-aging culture itself. Fitness routines, hair care obsession, wellness branding, endless magazine fascination with how she maintained herself physically. Again, none of this destroyed her fame, but it slowly narrowed her identity. The more she became associated with eternal youth and polished wellness, the harder it became for audiences to imagine her as emotionally dangerous, artistically fearless, or transformative. She became aspirational, but less intriguing. And in modern entertainment, intrigue matters more than perfection, especially once streaming changed everything. The rise of prestige television should have been the perfect opportunity for Jennifer Aniston to reinvent herself completely. Television suddenly became darker, more psychologically layered, and more respected than many films. Actors who once chased movie stardom now desperately wanted complicated streaming roles. And for the first time in years, Jennifer seemed to recognize the urgency of reinvention. That's partly why the morning show became so important. The series represented more than a television comeback. It felt like Jennifer Aniston trying to reclaim seriousness. And interestingly, the role fit her almost uncomfortably well. A woman trapped inside media performance. A public figure maintaining emotional composure while privately unraveling. A celebrity whose identity became inseparable from audience expectations. For perhaps the first time in years, Jennifer appeared to be channeling something rawer and more personal on screen. Critics noticed it immediately. Because beneath the polished exterior, there was finally tension again. Pain, anger, emotional weariness. And maybe that revealed the saddest possibility of Jennifer Aniston's entire career. The deeper actress audiences wanted may have always existed. She just spent decades hiding her to survive Hollywood. But even the morning show exposed another uncomfortable truth. Jennifer Aniston's strongest performances often emerged when playing women trapped by image, fame, media expectations, and emotional isolation. Which raises a painful question. Was she acting? Or confessing? Because behind the scenes, Jennifer's personal life increasingly reflected emotional solitude rather than the glamorous fantasy projected onto her for decades. Despite enormous fame, wealth, beauty, and global recognition, there was always a strange sadness hovering around her public image. Not tragic sadness. Not brokenness. Something more modern. Disconnection. The loneliness of becoming universally recognizable while privately unknowable. That loneliness intensified as celebrity culture evolved online. Social media changed fame permanently. Younger stars now built audiences through chaos, vulnerability, oversharing, political identity, and constant digital intimacy. Jennifer Aniston entered Instagram late compared to newer celebrities, and when she finally did, the reaction was massive. Millions rushed toward the nostalgia of seeing Rachel again. But even that moment revealed something deeper about her career. The excitement wasn't entirely about Jennifer Aniston's future. It was about emotional memory. The audience wasn't discovering her. They were revisiting themselves through her. And nostalgia can keep a celebrity beloved long after it stops keeping them culturally essential. That's the dangerous illusion Jennifer Aniston lived inside. She remained famous enough to avoid humiliation, while slowly drifting away from the center of artistic conversation. And perhaps the most painful part is that her decline never looked dramatic enough for people to acknowledge it openly. There was no catastrophic flop, no public collapse, no disgrace. Just a gradual realization that Jennifer Aniston's cultural importance increasingly depended on the past. That's why reunions, nostalgia interviews, friends' anniversaries, and throwback marketing became more powerful than many of her newer performances. The industry wasn't investing in Jennifer Aniston the artist anymore. It was investing in Jennifer Aniston the memory. And memories are profitable. But they're also dangerous. Because eventually, if an actor becomes too connected to nostalgia, audiences stop expecting evolution entirely. They stop asking who you are now, and only care about who you used to be. By the late 2010s, Jennifer Aniston still had wealth, fame, connections, and admiration. But something far more fragile was slipping away quietly underneath all of it. Mystique. The sense that there was still something emotionally undiscovered about her. And once Hollywood stops feeling curious about you, the decline has already begun. The most tragic part of Jennifer Aniston's story is that she never truly failed. She stayed famous, wealthy, loved by millions. But somewhere along the way, Hollywood stopped seeing her as an evolving actress and started treating her like a memory people wanted to protect forever. And that became the real problem. For years, Jennifer survived Hollywood by being safe. She avoided scandals, protected her image, and stayed universally likable. But eventually, that safety started hurting her creatively. Audiences already knew exactly what they would get from her. Comfort, charm, familiarity, but not surprise, not transformation, not danger. Meanwhile, Hollywood changed completely. Younger stars became more unpredictable, emotionally raw, and artistically fearless. Fame itself became louder, messier, and more chaotic. Jennifer Aniston belonged to an older era, an era built on perfection and control. And slowly, that kind of celebrity started fading away. Even her beauty became part of the trap. The media constantly praised how well she was aging, but hidden inside those compliments was pressure. Pressure to stay recognizable forever. Pressure to never visibly change. Over time, Jennifer became less of a performer people wanted to discover, and more of a nostalgic symbol people wanted to preserve. That's why so many conversations about her always return to the past. Friends, Brad Pitt, the 1990s, the old Hollywood fantasy she represented. The future slowly became less important than the memory. And maybe that's how Jennifer Aniston quietly ruined her career. Not through scandal, not through collapse, but by becoming too careful to change. Too dependent on the version of herself the world already loved. Because in Hollywood, survival and artistic growth are not always the same thing. And sometimes the saddest downfall isn't public destruction. It's slowly disappearing inside a perfect image everyone refuses to let go of.